You've clicked on this video no doubt because you've heard numerous times now people talking about load cell, brake pedal this and that, load cells are better, they make you faster, etc. And you're hoping to find an answer that isn't just get a load cell. I'm afraid they are right. Premium pedal sets that include load cells are just outright better, but don't despair because there are some tricks to get the mileage left in your G29 brake pedal, and you can optimise your brake pedal for virtually no cost at all by copying my brake mod. It's totally reversible, pretty easy and costs next to nothing, and if you've got the material handy you can even start straight away. When people say that load cell brake pedals are better, what they're trying to say is it's easier for your brain to nail braking by feeling the pressure through your leg than the position of your foot. You can't really do this with the G29 out of the box because it doesn't take much pressure to max out the brake pedal, so you've got less chance to pick up this leg muscle memory. When your brake pedal is firm enough to allow you to engage real force in your leg, it's just naturally easier and more accurate for your brain to do, ultimately giving you the consistency. So if we can make the G29 brake pedal fight back a bit and let you build that response, that's when we start to change things. This brake mod removes the initial travel that's present in the brake pedal and dramatically increases the amount of force required to press it. If you've got a racing seat then this won't cause any concern, but if you've got an office chair like I do, then you'll need to find a way of securing your chair as best as possible from rolling back. And the most resolute way I've ever found to do this is to buy stem casters like mine. You can do this through a link in the description, it'll take you straight there so you know what you're looking for. You probably didn't know they existed, but they work beautifully for sim racing duty on office chairs. So before we really get into it, let me remind you that you modify your pedals at your own risk. Don't do this if you want to preserve any outstanding warranty, and always take care and go slow when disassembling, and also watch this whole video through before you even pick up your screwdriver. Now that we understand each other, here's a summary of what I'm going to show you how to do in this video. Take off the pedal faces, unscrew the footplate screws, open up the pedals, careful of the wire, open up the brake spring, make a supplemental brake block from an eraser, tape it up, reassemble the brake spring, careful of the wire, put the footplate back on, screw the footplate screws back in, put the pedal faces back on, fiddle with the calibration, rebuild your brain synapses and get used to braking all over again. First things first, to disassemble the pedal box, start by undoing the screws on the pedal face and removing the plates from each pedal. Then flip your pedals over and unscrew all of the silver screws on the bottom of the pedal box. Ignore any black screws as they don't need to be undone at any stage throughout this. Remember there are 2 silver screws you can only see if you flick the carpet gripper down, so don't forget about those. Once all the silver screws are undone and removed, hold fire for a second. There's a small wire that is still attached to the footplate, so now lift it up carefully and rotate it over so that the wire doesn't get too much tension. You need to then unscrew this from the footplate or you'll risk damage to the wire during the rest of the job. It's safer to just release it from the footplate as it'll only take a minute to unscrew. Once you've got the naked pedals in front of you, you'll need to get to the Allen key screws holding the top shaft of the brake spring assembly in place. To get to them it's easiest to use an Allen key as the clearance isn't very easy for a long screwdriver to get to unless you press the other pedals out of the way, and then it's still not an ideal angle even if you do that. Once the Allen key screws are out from either side, you should be able to rotate the brake spring assembly up and out of the pedal. Lift the black half of the spring cover off and you'll now see your brake spring and the rubber block inside the brake spring too. Take these both out and put them on a table. So on my desk here you can see the brake spring and the brake block. The block is what Logitech puts in the brake pedal to introduce resistance to it once you get to about halfway. That's what you can feel when you press the brake pedal and it gets firmer the further down you press it. What we're going to be doing is adding another rubber block on top of this standard block, and we're going to do it using a run-of-the-mill eraser. If you don't have one, you can buy one off Amazon for a couple of quid using the link in the description. Or just pop down to the corner shop, you idle. Cut a piece off the end of the eraser that matches the rough cross-section of the original block as closely as you can. The height of a block is variable, but I recommend you cut your block down to about half or 2/3 of the height of the original Logitech brake block. Then stack the 2 blocks together, one on top of the other, and wrap them using electrical tape or something similar. It's probably not absolutely necessary to tape the blocks together, but I feel like it'll help keep it consistent inside the spring. So with the standard block supplemented by our homemade additional block, the total height of the brake blocks is now much higher. So we'll now put this block back into the spring assembly. If you find you can't get the holes to line up on the brake pedal because the bigger brake block now prevents you from being able to compress it all enough to line them up, you might have to go back and shave another millimetre or two off of your added block. Trim it all down a bit and try again until you can line up the holes without having to use any serious force. So long as when you have the brake pedal all back together again, you've got very little initial travel when you push your hand on the pedal, that's what we're looking for. Reassembly of the whole pedal box is exactly the reverse of the disassembly. So stick it all back together again and let's get to tweaking the setup in the Logitech software and in whatever sim you're using. For the example in this video we're using iRacing, but try to focus on the intent of the configuration rather than the exact details, and you'll know what you're aiming for in your own chosen sim. So here's how things look in the G-Hub software now after we've put the extra brake block in. If I put what I would consider full reasonable pressure through the brake, it's hitting around 70% force and not going any further. The only way I'm going to get 100% pressure now is if I press the pedal with way more force than I would ever want to use in actual racing. In almost all cars in sim racing, you don't want to use 100% braking force. The name of the game is usually hitting around 60 to 70% of braking to brake on the threshold of grip. Even in cars that have ABS, this is still true, at least from my experience of GT cars in the sims. I've played with the pedal sensitivity slider in G-Hub until I'm happy that when I imitate braking hard into a hairpin or something like that, I'm able to smoothly hit 60 to 70% braking force, then roll back off it gently. The rest of the calibration relies on the sim and the car you like to use, so we'll hit that next. So in the iRacing menu, for example, you'll want to calibrate your pedals, but when you come to the brake calibration, you'll want to press the brake quite hard. Not as hard as physically possible, but press it harder than you would ever normally have to do in a session. This pushes the calibration of the pedal beyond where we'll ever need it, so we've got more flexibility with the mid-range, and we can mess around with the brake force factor slider to get it just where we need it. So now we're going to press the brake pedal pretty hard, the same way we would if we were braking from high speed, such as into a hairpin. Hold the brake pedal where it is, with the amount of force you're currently applying, and slide the brake force factor until the pedal is registering about 60% braking. Once it's there, release the brakes and click done. Press the brake a few times to make sure it's acting right, and then get out on track and try it. You might need to change the sensitivity slider in the G-Hub software or in the sim menu to get it spot on for your own preferences, because you might not like it how I like it, but the end goal is the same. The whole point of all of this is to try to match your leg force to that magic 60 to 70% braking level by optimizing and focusing your G29 brake pedal to do that specific thing better than it did in stock form. If this is the first thing you've done to modify your G29 brake pedal, then let me tell you, when you first press your pedal after installing the extra brake block, you won't like it initially. You have to trust me on this. You will adapt to the force required to press the brake, and you will prefer it after a couple of days of practice. You will pick up a much more powerful form of muscle memory, and you'll also be able to release the brakes a bit smoother too when you turn in. Just have faith that it will start to come to you, and it will start to be a lot more of a natural feeling in the leg. It worked pretty well for me, otherwise I wouldn't be coming back and making a video about it, so I'm really hoping it does help for you. For the last few months I've been using a Fanatec setup, as you might well know from previous videos, and I roped in my G29 just to spotlight some things that I did to get the most out of mine while I had it. Stepping back down to this setup is initially a big shock to the system, but the actual feeling through the pedal, the firmness of it, is not that different from the club spots that I'm currently running. It only takes about 6 or so laps of Monza to start retuning my leg to the pressure required and start feeling quite comfortable. Even though the G29 pedals are not load cell and removing some of the range of motion should cause a problem in some way, I'm sure some people will think, the stock sensors are still good enough that you can do this. You can firm up the brake pedal to this extent and still get a good range of motion. So when people talk about load cell pedals being better, what they are actually talking about is how much more effective it is to use all your muscles in your leg to brake, not just your tippy toes. And don't feel too bad about manipulating your G29 pedals to do a particular job better. Professional racing drivers will and do change absolutely anything they can about their controls to gain some consistency, and so should you if you're getting good enough to feel hampered by your G29 pedal set. Considering this mod will cost you almost nothing but an hour of your time, it's worth a shot at least. If it doesn't help you improve after a few days, perhaps one of the many G29 brake mods or load cell conversion kits will help, and although not as frugal as my suggestion, they will still be considerably cheaper than a whole new pedal set. But remember to be realistic about all of this. Better equipment has surely got to be the ultimate destination for you, but this mod might help you until then. Even though I'm a Fanatec convert now, I know where I came from. The G29 is an absolute workhorse of a wheel, and I know that if you can't afford to upgrade your G29 yet, you will do anything to chase the race win, gain a 10th per lap, anything. And you shouldn't be denied that if you've got more important things to spend money on right now, so I'm totally on your side. And that's all. I'm hoping this was helpful and inspired you to try it, and I'm hoping even more that it actually works well for you. If it does or it doesn't, come back and drop a comment for anybody who follows you and watches this video and tell them about your experiences. Liking and subscribing are the quick and easy ways to support me, and a big thanks to those who already did so. I'm properly grateful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again.